So today I want to tell you a lovely success story from a family with a young boy, a little baby who had severe eczema. It was over all of his body, and it was also infected. When we saw him, he had not long been discharged from the hospital, and he was swaddled, which basically means all his body had been wrapped up and with his hands like mittens to prevent him touching the skin and infecting it or irritating the eczema. So it was over his whole body and it was infected, and he was on antibiotics, and his parents were obviously very distressed, and he was in a constant state of discomfort, pain, irritation. So, and then the sleep deprivation on top of that. So it wasn't a happy scene for these guys, but we did help them. So when you're working with childhood eczema, how long it takes for it to completely heal depends on the extent. So with this wee lad, it was over his whole body, and it was infected. So if it's on smaller portions of the body and it's like dry and irritated, or maybe even the skin's broken but it's not infected, all these factors play a part in how long it takes for the body to heal up entirely. So with babies, the most common dietary irritant in terms of eczema is dairy. Babies don't have or commonly have a low level of the enzyme lactase, and that's the enzyme your body needs to digest lactose. So lactose-free dairy products are definitely better tolerated, but with babies it's important to take a break if they can. So for babies on solids, you would take the dairy out of the diet. So this wee lad was a formula fed baby, and he was only on formula. So what that means is you can't entirely remove dairy when they're exclusively formula fed, but what you can do, and this is very, very effective, is rotate the formulas. So this is what we did with this boy. You have 1 day of a lactose-free dairy formula, so it's ideal if you can get lactose-free. So lactose is the sugar in the milk, so it's milk sugar, and casein is the protein in the milk. So they're two different things, and usually lactose is the problem. So you give them 1 day of that, and then the next day a goat formula. Goat's milk is more similar to human milk than cow's milk. And then on the third day, a soy-based formula. So rotating, and then back to a dairy formula. So rotating those three formulas means that you have the same formula every third day rather than every day, all day, month in, month out. That's when it becomes a problem. Not so much the dairy itself, but that it's so much that the body can't handle it. It's just too much. So that's what we did with this wee lad. We gave him a very small dose of childhood vitamin D. He was tremendously useful in eczema, especially the darker the skin, the more vitamin D, the more sunlight you need to get adequate vitamin D. So the sunlight hours required to produce adequate vitamin D in the body is very dependent on how dark the skin is. So with this wee boy, he needed a lot of sunlight to get vitamin D. So we topped him up a little bit to give him, because obviously he was covered and needed to be covered. So sunlight was not an option for him. And we didn't do a blood test. You wouldn't necessarily need to do a blood test on a baby. You don't want to put them through any more discomfort, and that worked. It took 3 months because the infection had to clear, and then the skin had to heal. And with that change in the diet, and when they introduced food without dairy, and then much later they were able to add a bit of fermented dairy, things like yogurt and butter, and no problem. So that was a very, very happy ending, and we were so delighted to see. The family actually came back to see us about 3 months after that, when we gave them all the advice and were a bit concerned about them, but they came back to show us their beautiful boy whose skin was perfect, and he was a very happy, thriving young man, or young boy. So yeah, that was a very wonderful success story. Now with when you do this, vitamin D, like I said, is very important. In an older child, you can give, as long as there's no fish allergies, you can give a little bit of cod liver oil, just a little bit, and you can mix that into the food. Directions for cod liver oil, when it's designed for children, have an age range with a dose for each age range. So you just follow that. That makes a big difference. That gives a bit of vitamin A, a bit of vitamin D, and it has an anti-inflammatory effect. And then with the vitamin D. So those, dairy, as I said, is the main one. You can sometimes really help eczema by adding in a probiotic. Now in this case you would use a powdered probiotic, and it would have to be dairy free. You can't use a dairy probiotic because it will cause a flare. So that's the main, like I said, with children mainly it's dairy. Now the other one that can be a bit of a problem is soy. Now that's soy protein, soy flour, soybeans, that kind of thing. Tofu and other types of fermented traditional soy foods are not so much of a problem, but these ones, they're hidden in lots of food. But if you're putting a child on a soy-based, exclusively soy-based formula, that's going to be a problem. He's having soy or she's having soy every day, day in, day out, month in, month out, and that becomes a problem. And then the soy can be the aggravating factor for the eczema. The other problem with soy when it comes to formula in babies, when it comes to boys, is it suppresses testosterone. So in those quantities. Not if you're having, you know, some soy milk in your coffee or your tea, these things, you don't have to worry about it. But with babies, if you're giving them soy every day, month in, month out, you can definitely cause a bit of havoc with their testosterone levels, which and they need that for their development. So that's what you do. So you rotate the formula. Same thing. If it's a soy problem, you would rotate the formula. So every third day. It takes a little longer because you can't have a break from these formulas entirely. But giving that rotation gives a chance for the body to get a break and heal. So that's what you do with that. So with a breastfed baby, it's easy. You just take that out of the mother's diet for a period of time. Now you're usually looking at between 6 to 8 weeks for mild eczema, and up to 3 months when it's really severe. So that's the time. But 6 to 8 weeks, you're not going to, if you sort of go back onto the food after having a break for 4 weeks, it's all going to come back. So you take a break from 6 to 8 weeks from that food, and then you reintroduce. So you might have some yogurt, and you wait 24 hours. And then if there's no flare up with the baby, it's fine. And so then what you would do is go back to ideally an every second day consumption of that food, whether it's the soy or the dairy or a bit of both. So you don't have it every day. If you have it every day, give it a week or two and the eczema will start to come back. But if you have it every second day, totally fine. That's for very sensitive children, twice a week. But generally every second day is going to be totally fine to put that food back in the diet. Now the other problem is additives. Additives don't generally cause the eczema. So if there is a tendency to eczema, there are a couple of different types of additives that will cause a flare, and the flare that it causes can be quite severe. And the food and additive relationship in terms of time, it's within 24 hours. So generally if you have a particular aggravating food, so you have a glass of milk, then by the next day, about 12 hours later, 12 to 24, that's the time you're going to see the flare up of the eczema. It starts to get, there's a little bit itchy, dryness and such. So that gives you an idea of tracking back to what you've eaten versus what's caused the flare. So now the first additive that is significant, now whether that's in the child's diet or the mum's diet, so when it's a child, you know, who's eating solids, is MSG. Now MSG stands for monosodium glutamate. On labels and such, you'll see it as 621. So 621 or MSG is commonly found in actual snack foods. So flavored potato chips, flavored crackers, maybe breaded chicken, savory foods like that. Chinese food is traditionally where MSG was found. Most places now, if you ask them to not use MSG in the food, they just don't use it, and it's not a problem. But it is in a lot of foods. It's a flavor enhancer, and enhances more savory, salty foods. So keep an eye out for either MSG or 621. So there's another additive called disodium glutamate, and and sometimes you'll see that in foods as well as an additive. I am not certain whether that does have the same reactions in the body for when it comes to eczema as the monosodium glutamate, but best to avoid it anyway, and use that 24-hour rule. If you have something and have a significant flare, you can usually track back. It's either dairy or that soy protein, soy milk, soy flour, something like that, or the MSG. And the last additive is artificial preservatives. So they're the 200 numbers. They're not necessarily written in words, but they could be written in numbers. So they range from 249, 250, 251, 252, and then those are the ones you find in meat. So sausages, bacon, ham, pork. You want to look for that additive and get naturally cured sausages, naturally cured bacon, naturally preserved with salt rather than those nitrates and nitrites they are. So avoiding those kind of meats, having more natural meats, will make sure you avoid those 200 numbers. That goes for both the mother who's breastfeeding and a toddler who's getting fed, who's on solids, or a young child who's on solids. So there's another type of 200 preservatives that are in sweet things, like 222, 221, 220. You find them in alcohol, wine and beer, particularly high in wine. So I mean, babies and children aren't going to be drinking alcohol, but that's where you do find 220, 222. But they're in things like tomato sauce, pickles, canned fruit, so more fruity type things, lollies, some kind of some candies and sweets will have those 200 preservatives. So though you want to avoid that category of preservatives as well, the ones that go in meat and the ones that go in fruits and preserves and sweets. Easy to do, very easy to do. Once you know those numbers and you know how to avoid them, you find the brands and it's not hard to do. So now in terms of once in a while, you're going out to a birthday party, the child's going to a birthday party, no problem. If you start having those things every day, like I said, every day for a week, the eczema is going to come back. So you want to make sure that it's like an infrequent thing as a treat, or when you're on the road, you're traveling, and you don't have other options in terms of foods and snacks for your child. So yeah, that's what you do for eczema. It's not hard to treat. There's a dietary factor, which is the most important. A little bit of nutritional things to boost the immune system and the healing capacity of the body. And it takes a little bit longer with formula-fed babies, like I said, because you rotate the formulas. With breastfed babies, mum can take it out of her diet. So easily done. So that's those four things. You've got dairy, you've got soy, you've got the MSG, and the 200 preservatives. Now 99% of childhood eczema is going to be in that category with those foods and additives. Now sometimes you get allergies, not just food intolerances. What I've discussed are food intolerances. They're in the diet too much. You take them out, you give a break, and you put them back in less frequently, not a problem. But there are allergies, and these things can be to eggs and things like that. But that's something you can have diagnosed. You go to your doctor, they do specific testing, and if there are foods that your child is actually allergic to, that will come up in a diagnostic test with your doctor. So that, just to be clear, we're not talking about those kinds of allergies. Those are permanent type things. We're talking about food intolerances that cause these eczema problems. So I hope that helps. Please feel free to use the information any way you want. Don't have to believe me. That's my maxim, just about. You don't have to believe me. Try it out yourself, and it hasn't failed me yet. So I can tell you that, but give it a go, and I would be very interested to hear how you go. And if you've listened this long, I want to thank you. Thank you for listening to me this long. It's been delightful sharing this information, and I really hope that helps you with your own family or your loved ones. And if you do give it a go, please get in touch and let me know how it goes. All right.